Welcome to the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council with hosts Grace Evans and Moses Brattrud. Stay informed on the top stories on life, family, and religious freedom. Get the facts, stand for truth. Hello and welcome back to the Family Beacon podcast. My name is Grace Evans. I'm here with Moses Brattrud. Today we have really exciting news, you guys. Moses has been slaving away along with Becca Delahunt to bring you guys...
Acting Director of Public Policy.
Yes, I didn't know if that was officially announced yet. But yes, our Acting Director of Policy. They have been slaving away for, 3 weeks now, Moses?
Honestly, no, it's been several months.
Crunch time.
Yeah, crunch time
Yeah,
for the last few
3
weeks.
weeks. Along with our CEO, too, right? Hasn't he been helping a lot?
Yeah.
To get you guys our voter guide. So we will be talking about that shortly. Basically, I even had someone walk up to me today after class, one of my classmates, and he said, I won't say his name but he said, can you just send me a list of everyone you're voting for, and then I'll vote for those same people? And I said, well, number one, you don't live in my district. And number two, you
Sounds
probably...
Like a fuzzy idea of, what districts are.
I said, you know what? Actually, I have a voter guide for you. You can go here, and you can figure out how different candidates vote, and he thought that was awesome, so I sent that to him. So we'll be talking about the voter guide, super exciting. We'll also be talking about a pro-abortion tweet that one of our representatives actually deleted because it was too spicy, so we have some spicy thoughts on that.
That was ghoulish.
And then there was even more ghoulish, honestly, Moses. Mm-hmm. There was this pro-euthanasia activity kids book that was released that basically indoctrinates kids into valuing and lauding euthanasia. Oh. So ghoulish, right?
Yeah.
So those are our top stories for the day, and then maybe we'll also talk about what we're reading if we have time. Mm-hmm. But without further ado, let's tell our audience about the voter guide, because you guys, it was so much work.
Yes. Are you ready for this? So I'm going to be on my screen showing you guys, taking a little tour of the voter guide. Now, if you are listening and not watching, that's fine. I'm going to be just walking through how this works, so it'll work even if you are just listening along to the podcast. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I should say that we have two versions of the voter guide. We have a print voter guide, which you can get as a PDF, and we have our online personalized voter guide. So if you want to get the print voter guide, we're going to be sending this out today or tomorrow for you to look at, and that will have every candidate running for office in Minnesota. Now, but if you just want to see the candidates in your area, please go ahead and go to mnfamilyvoter.com. Now, I'm recording my screen, and I'm going to enter my information here. I'll just...
Maybe blur out your address.
I'm going to enter I thought about this. I'm going to enter the address of the... everyone knows my email address, so I'll just put that on there. Actually, I'll just do that one. And then I'm going to put the address.
I want to see what you're doing.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. And then, so I'm putting in the address of the governor's mansion in St. Paul.
How do you know the address of the governor's mansion?
I have an incredible amount of useless knowledge floating around in my head.
Secretly, Moses wants to be governor someday.
That would be kind of cool. Honestly,
that would be so cool.
The best part would be the house. It's a really
Would
nice
you
house.
hire me as your comms director?
Absolutely not.
Oh, what? Why not?
I would hire you as my chief of staff.
Oh, why that?
Because then you would keep all the
riffraff.
All the riffraff away.
Honestly, I probably would be
any...
better at chief of staff than comms director.
Yeah,
honestly,
you need a
but I like to be. I was talking to my sister about this, about how I kind of want to do chief of staff stuff / operations, and she was like, "You'd be really good at that, Grace, but I feel like you get sick of that because you like to be front and center where the action is. Like you like to be the face of the movement." And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of true."
Chief of staff can be pretty front and center. Depends on the chief of staff.
Anyways.
Okay, so thank you, Grace.
You're welcome. Your future chief of staff.
No, I'm not going to run for office. But
he says that now.
I think everyone should comment and say if they want Grace to run for office or Moses to run for office. And I think that
watch no one comment.
The answer will be Grace. Okay.
I am Gen Z.
Folks, I've put in my address, or an address, I should say, and all it needs is an address, email address, valid zip code. Mm-hmm. It is only valid for Minnesota residents. You should know that. Then you can choose whether you want to subscribe to get our weekly updates, and then you click Get My Personalized Voter Guide. and then it thinks for a second, and then it loads. And right away, what you're going to see is that it has analyzed that I live in Congressional District 4, which covers Ramsey County, basically, and the suburbs, Senate District 64, and House District 64A, and we'll go down and see. Now, I look at the responses. Now, we're going to have various responses. So, Y means yes, N means no. Question mark means either someone is declined to respond or their position is unknown or unclear. Asterisk means a comment, and little dagger symbol means that the position is based upon the candidate's record or extensive research. Now you can see that, then I scroll down a little bit more, I can see the questions we asked federal candidates. I won't read them all for you, but I want to just say that they talk about abortion, gender, women's sports, school choice, religious freedom, and parental rights. So then I can see the congressional candidates in my area. For me, it's May Laura Shung versus Betty McCollum, and I can see their positions. Then if I scroll down, I can see the candidates for governor, and I can see the topics for them. Again, it's protections for unborn children, level playing field for female athletes, school choice, voluntary biblical counseling, religious freedom protections. So you can check the candidates for governor, Scott Jensen and Tim Walz. You can check their positions on those issues. Scrolling down, Attorney General, I have positions for Keith Ellison and Jim Schultz, and I can see whether they oppose or support certain things, specifically abortion, religious freedom protections, level playing field for female athletes. And then I can see the candidates who are running for Secretary of State and State Auditor. Because those positions don't actually deal with legislation directly, those folks are not in our they're not in our voter guide, but you can find out more about them. You can get their bio and learn more about them. And then finally, we get down to the state Senate and state House candidates. So again, it's pretty much the same questions, so I won't go over those again. But I can see I have Aaron Murphy and Kaylee Herr are the two Democrats, and Robert Bouchard and Dan Walsh are the two Republicans, and I can see their positions on these issues. So this is really really interesting, I think, for people to see. And I think the most interesting part is that it is going to show people at the state house level. So that is you and only like 40,000 other people live in the same state house district as you. And you don't have to go anywhere and find out what house district am I in, who is my candidate. You don't have to do any Googling. You just go to mnfamilyvoter.com, put in your address. We do the work for you. Not only do we show you who is running, which names you're going to see on the ballot, but where those candidates stand on the positions and on the issues that matter to Christians in Minnesota, like life, family, and religious freedom issues. So that's the voter guide. Again, go to mnfamilyvoterguide.com and you can access that information.
Awesome.
And the print guide also, I should, one more note, if you want to distribute copies of the print guide in churches, we're hoping to raise funds to be able to do that. So go ahead and you can access the guide online. And of course, you can print it out yourselves and distribute it. We make it available for that. So we're going to send an email about this in the coming days. Get in touch with us if you want to distribute large quantities of the voter guide. We've distributed thousands of copies in previous elections, and we want to do that again this year. So that's the voter guide, Grace.
Yeah, and I think it's so helpful. I'm just so glad that we've done this because, like we've said, it's hours and hours and hours of work. But I'm so grateful because not everyone is going to be invested in every single candidate tracking the news, nor should they be, honestly.
Absolutely
I don't think it's very healthy. Honestly, even I don't do that. I'm a kind of a political junkie compared to some people, but compared to others, I'm not. I don't know. I care, but I really care more once they're elected. And of course I care right before, and I think most people are like me in that, where we care before election day, like right before election day and on election day. But the problem is, if you haven't been tracking all these people like throughout the past few months or years, then how do you actually know how they voted? That's why the voter guide is really helpful. So
Absolutely.
I use it when I go to vote because there are some people that I know of and I've met and I like, but then there are some people where I think, okay, who is this person? Do I like this person or not? So yes, go check out the voter guide. I'll have that linked in the description for you guys. Let's also talk about this pro-abortion tweet, Moses.
Yeah.
A state representative deleted her tweet, and it was very spicy, let me tell you. In the tweet, she said that she supports abortion because motherhood is hard.
Oh, it's just disgusting. I'm sorry, but there's no other word for it. It's so horrifying.
Yeah, I really can't believe it. So this is her tweet. She said, being a mom is the hardest job I'll ever have. No one should be forced to be a parent. # abortion is healthcare.
Oh.
Just because something's hard doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. If you don't do hard things, you're not going to grow. And like this whole language of forced to be a parent and forced to give birth, because that's another one that people use a lot, and I want to do an unwoke video responding to that, it's just so inaccurate and misleading because, of course, when someone hears that, like, they think, oh, yeah, we don't want to force anyone to do anything. But if you think about it in the real terms, it's like, well, no one should be forced to be murdered. Like, we're against forced death.
Talk about that for coercion.
Right. That's like the epitome of coercion, of you're not even going to allow someone to take his first breath or her first breath. Yeah. And so once you're pregnant, too, you're already a parent. You're already a mom. That's the thing. And I feel like that's the misleading thing, is they're saying, oh, well, until your baby's born, then you're not a parent. So you can choose before then if you're going to be a mom or not. But no, from the moment that you've conceived, you have a sweet little baby and you are a mom. Yeah. And so, yeah. And also this whole thing about, the thing that's really sad is that she tweeted this and she has multiple children. So imagine tweeting that out and being a mom or a dad and saying, having kids is so hard, but that's why we need abortion, because if you don't want them, then we can just get rid of them. Like, wow. Imagine, I hope her kids aren't old enough to have Twitter, because that's sad.
Like, if I could address this as a parent, yes, parenting is hard. Is it the hardest thing that I've ever done? In some ways, I would say, yeah, absolutely. But it's also one of the best things I've ever done. Like, the ways in which I've changed becoming a dad. I like the ways I've changed becoming a dad. And furthermore, like, my older kid, Mary, she's getting to be to the point where she's like one of the most interesting people I know. She's fun to
I bet she's so smart too, honestly.
She's so smart. We were just at the doctor this morning. She was absolutely, the doctor
she's
was
a cutie
so
pie.
Impressed with how smart and how verbal she is. Honestly, she's just...
How old is she now?
She's 3. She's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. So yeah, parenting is hard. Late nights, early mornings, diapers. You know the drill.
You're a really good dad, Moses.
Thank you. Many of our audience members know the drill. Now, to take that, if she had said, parenting is hard, so we should have more support for families.
Yeah.
That would be great. I would love if the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, frankly, in the state, were more about making life easier for families, and not just by providing childcare.
And on that point, Moses, she is perfectly poised to do exactly that, because she is currently on Minnesota committees that revolve around those things. She's on the Early Childhood Committee. She's on the Health and Human Services Committee. She has a background in nursing and education. Like, this woman is perfectly poised to support families and women in need.
Yeah.
But instead, she goes around saying, oh, you should kill your child if you think that it'll make your life harder. Nope. That ain't it, sis.
It's going to be a big no. So you might be surprised, Grace, that this is not someone who's in like a super incredibly left-wing area.
Rochester, right?
Yeah, and it's not central Rochester. I want to tell people, because you should figure out, if you live in Rochester, you should figure out if you live in this area. Oh, you know what? Guess what?
What?
Representative Bolden is running for Senate now.
Oh.
So she was in the House, and now she's running for Senate. So let's figure out, I'm guessing that...
And Bolden is this woman that tweeted the...
Yeah, Representative Liz Bolden. Like, say her name. Remember.
Hashtag say her name.
Remember that she said this. So if we talk about the map, this is an area that covers most of central Rochester and goes up the 52
Are you still
corridor.
Recording?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm not recording my screen. But if you guys look on the map, this is a district that goes from most of central Rochester up the 52 corridor to the Wabasha County border, including Orinoco. I assume that's how you say that. So this is not the most liberal district in the state. She's facing, it looks like she's facing I'm not sure who her opponent is, but you should.
But we could look at our voter guide.
Woo! Exactly. Go to the voter guide. If you live in Rochester, figure out if Liz Bolden is on your ballot.
And do not vote for her.
Yeah, and we don't endorse any candidate, but we can safely say that someone who takes that ghoulish attitude toward
ghoulish
parenting and abortion does not deserve your vote.
Amen. Preach it.
Yeah.
Okay, enough about that. Let's talk about something that is pretty disgusting and sad and dystopian. This pro-euthanasia kids activity book. Now, this is happening in Canada, so that's like, I don't want to say it's a good thing, but it's like, I'm glad that it's not happening here. But the thing is, as we've seen, things that happen in Canada soon happen in the U.S., unfortunately. So we're like, yeah, sure, we're one step removed from Canada. But I mean, here in Minnesota, we're practically Canadian, right? We're so close to the border.
Yeah.
And
they call Minnesota the lost province.
Oh, gosh. So basically, as we know, this was an article by National Review, and I thought it was very well written. We've talked about this before in the podcast, the fact that children in our society are so marginalized and oppressed. Like, there is no other people group that is more oppressed than children, right? We see that in a variety of ways. We see that with gender transitioning. We see that with so-called gender transitioning, I should say. We see it with pornography. Like, there's so many different things where children are hurt in our society. Abortion, of course. And apparently, that now includes indoctrinating children to believe that when a loved one is being killed, euthanized, then that's something that they should be supportive of, aware of, informed on. And so this activity book was developed for kids age 6 to 12. So this is fairly young, right? Yeah. Like 6 is very young. Even for a 12-year-old, this is just, I mean, it's pure indoctrination. Let me read you some of this, Moses. This is from the book. It explains how a person is killed during euthanasia. Like, okay, wow, you're going to really tell a kid how someone's going to be killed. So it says the 3 medicines work like this. The first medicine makes the person feel very relaxed and fall asleep. They may yawn or snore or mumble. And note how they're like trying to like make it feel like normal, right?
Yeah.
And then they say the second medicine causes a coma in like air quotes, like, oh, you don't know what a coma is? Let me explain it to you. A coma looks like sleep, but is much deeper than regular sleep. The person will not wake up or be bothered by noise or touch. So they're trying to like emphasize this is what a coma is, and they won't be hurt at all. So don't you worry your sweet little head. And then they say the third medicine makes the person's lungs stop breathing, and then their heart stops beating. Because of the coma, the person does not notice this is happening, and it does not hurt. When their heart and lungs stop working, their body dies. I love how they say their body dies. They're not like the person dies. They're like their body dies. It will not start working again. Yeah, because you killed the person.
Yeah.
This often happens in just a few minutes, but sometimes, rarely, it can take hours. And then they go on to say, this is a really cruel part, right? They say, if the person asks to die, there is no changing their mind. This is what they tell the child. Like, if there's someone in your life, a loved one who says, I would like to die, you can't change their mind. Just be there for them, support them, think of what gifts you can bring them. That's literally part of the guide. They say they may feel that nothing will change their mind because the fact is there is nothing that can help their body or their suffering get better. That's what they're telling kids. Yeah. They're saying there's absolutely nothing you can do for someone who's struggling with mental health. There is nothing that will make them feel better. Now imagine telling kids this, teens, like preteens, 12-year-olds, that already struggle with this sort of thing. Like they're already struggling with mental health. If you say, if someone wants to die, you just can't change their mind. Well, what if they're feeling suicidal?
Yeah.
What if that kid is feeling suicidal and you just told them there's an easy way out with no suffering, no pain. It's just like falling asleep. And it's just not true. It's a lie to tell children that no one ever changes their mind, because studies have shown that people who undergo palliative care and appropriate emotional support, different interventions can overcome suicide, and that can help the ill or the disabled. And so palliative care, for those that aren't aware of exactly what it is, it's a caregiving approach that aims to optimize the quality of life and mitigating suffering for people that are suffering from various illnesses, often terminal illnesses or even like emotional problems. The other fact is that only 15% of Canadians have access to palliative care, which is life-affirming, right? And this is scandalous because this country is pushing euthanasia on everyone, right? But only 15% of the country can have access to life-affirming care that doesn't kill them, right?
That's so so dark, and I wanted to talk about like how medical aid in dying in Canada, you don't have to be terminally ill. Like this is something that
if you just
can
want
access.
to.
Well, this is what it says in the booklet. Someone has to be 18 years old, and they're trying to change that. They have a serious illness.
Can they
disease.
do it now if their parents sign off on it or no?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I feel like I've heard about that, but then I don't want to say something
okay.
I don't know.
Probably in the Netherlands, let's be real.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The Netherlands and Belgium, minors can
without
kill
parental
themselves.
consent?
I don't know. I think that...
They probably have to be notified at least.
I've only heard of it being with like 16 and 17-year-olds, and they are not getting parental consent.
Wow.
So this is how this booklet describes it. They have a serious illness, disease, or disability that hurts their body or their mind so much that it feels too hard to keep on living. Now notice how it doesn't say that they actually have a terminal illness. So we're like, this is someone who might have, let's say that they are paralyzed from the waist down, but in every other respect they're able to live a normal life. Well, that is something that is incurable. That's another one of the tests here. So someone who's paralyzed from the waist down, now don't get me wrong, that affects your quality of life. That is a real disability. That person needs and deserves to get compassionate health care that would help them improve their quality of life and live a joyful life with their family. And of course, if you have a serious disability, that's going to have effects on your mental health as well. Absolutely, for sure. But the idea that not terminally ill patients who are going through an insane amount of pain. Now, in fact, with modern pain management techniques, there's no justification for killing a patient at any stage in an illness, even terminally ill patients who are suffering from a lot of pain. There are so many ways. Palliative care is just one of them, that patients who are dying can be made comfortable and that they can live their life to its natural conclusion. Whereas it's just so perverse to talk about this, and especially it's perverse to talk about it for people who do not have a terminal illness, who may not even have a physical disability, who may just be severely depressed. And I think you were getting to that, talking about what if the people in their lives, the children who are reading this book, are suicidal? Well, what if these people are suicidal? Like, in theory, suicide is still a bad thing, right? Are we moving away from that? It's just so, like, how are we saying on the one hand, don't kill yourself, there's always hope, call this hotline if you feel suicidal, and on the other hand, we're saying, oh, well, if you really have felt like suicidal for several years, and if nothing's working, well, why doesn't the Canadian government just help you?
It kind of reminds me of the show 13 Reasons Why. I didn't actually watch it. I more so just read reviews on it. But it followed this girl who killed herself. And it kind of, the show apparently, purportedly, glorified suicide, which is really sad. Because she was suffering. I'll link arms with you. The other thing that's really sad is, and I just want to emphasize it, this whole idea is sad and immoral, but then the real kicker is the fact that we know that kids aren't just going to come out and accept this. Like, they're going to automatically feel sad if someone goes and is, like, killed, or someone helps to kill a loved one that is in their life. They don't support that, right? And so this whole children's activity book is being created because they know that kids have to be convinced and indoctrinated that killing is okay. They have to be indoctrinated to believe, oh, murder is fine as long as it's comfortable and they want to be killed, right? Because their immediate instinct won't be that. And this article did a good job emphasizing that this is going to seriously impact the emotional well-being of children, hands down, as they watch their loved ones killing being discussed, planned, and executed, right? And the author says that if he or she, I think it's a guy, were a kid and that happened to someone that he or she loved, that person would never want to see a doctor again, which is so true. I mean, if I was exposed to that as a kid, I would be scarred for life.
It changes the entire way we think about the medical system. These people are not just here to heal and make better and help you feel better. Asterisk, they're also here to kill you in certain circumstances. Whoops.
So, that story is very, very sad. Jack, how are we doing on time back there? What's the timestamp at?
24 minutes.
24 minutes.
I wanted to
think
talk
we
as well about how this is not, like, you talked about how this is in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing we should say is, like, this is coming here, and the possibility is real. Like, we need to be aware that the largest group advocating for this type of thing in the United States, called Compassion and Choices, they have made Minnesota a target. They try every legislative session to have this. This legislation has been introduced. To my knowledge, every legislative session recently. I don't remember, to be totally candid with you, whether the bill that's been introduced in Minnesota is only for patients who are terminally ill, or if it's for patients who have what I think they say incurable illness, which would include things like being paralyzed or being severely depressed and things like that. So I'm not sure what the Minnesota bill that's been proposed would do. However, it is imperative that we stop them, that we show that we value life from conception to the moment of natural death. We've talked about abortion today. We've talked, and now we don't talk about physician-assisted suicide, a huge amount on this podcast. And I think for most people, it's not an issue that they think about day in, day out. It is one of the questions on our voter guide because we think this is such an important issue. And moreover, it's one that state governments are in charge of. This is not something that's being done at the federal level. In the United States, it's being done at the state level. And so there are some states like Oregon and Washington where this is legal and people will go there to have themselves killed.
Yeah.
Do we want Minnesota to become a state like that?
Right.
And I just would say no.
And I think being like on the front lines of the fight for life, I do think about it a lot because I think, okay, we're fighting for children to be able to take their first breath. That's our goal. But then a lot of times I think, wow, like we're on the front lines there. But then on the back end, there are people that are fighting to euthanize the elderly or the disabled. And I think about it because I read this book called The Giver growing up. And in it, it's a dystopian society. Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's really good. Really sad, but really good. Basically, in this perfect quote unquote society, right? It's a dystopia. Like I say, there's lots of kids that are born, and first of all, there's like birth mothers, so women like give birth 2 times, and then they're done giving birth, and then those kids are like then placed in different homes, like they don't stay with their mothers. But the kids before that grow up in like this like nursing center for a year. And at the end of 1 year, the kids that like weigh the most and are the healthiest are kept, and the ones that aren't are euthanized.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're euthanized. They don't use that word, but they're euthanized. And then the elderly, when they reach a certain age, all of them are euthanized too. And so it always makes me think of that because, I mean, if we consider abortion to be moral in our society, of course we're going to think. And also the thing is, all of the conversations we're having right now about euthanasia, it's all like voluntary, right? Like we're all like, oh, if someone wants to, if someone requests this. But the thing is, if that becomes moral and accepted, then it will only be a matter of time before it won't be voluntary, before people will be forced to be euthanized because they're deemed unworthy or too old or too outdated. It'll be like, okay, when you get to be 60 years old, you just get euthanized because it doesn't hurt you and it's peaceful. It's like falling asleep, and our world just can't sustain you, and we shouldn't try to sustain you because your life isn't worth living and there's no sanctity of human life. Like that is coming. That is going to be next if we don't rise up right now. As soon as you start downplaying the sanctity of human life, it's just a slippery slope, right, Moses?
Yeah, absolutely.
So to close out our podcast, we can either talk about one more story or we can talk about the books we're reading. What do you think, Moses?
Well, I think that it would be great to talk about briefly about this.
The last story?
Yeah,
okay.
This last story.
We weren't sure if we were going to get to it, so I didn't mention it in the introduction. Apologies, you guys. But Moses, why don't you kick us off? Or I can, but...
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about, first of all, why this is important. So we're going to be talking about polyamory. Just a heads up, I guess maybe a trigger warning or a content warning.
Although, to be honest, I feel like before we needed a content warning too.
Well, yeah, fair enough. So we're going to be talking about polyamory laws in New York State. Now, or maybe I should say New York City. Now, why would it matter in Minnesota what New Yorkers are doing with their crazy laws? Well, I'll tell you. So the Respect for Marriage Act, which we call the Disrespect for Marriage Act, that's being considered by the U.S. Congress and will be taken up. It was passed by the U.S. House, will probably be taken up by the U.S. Senate after the election. That's a bill that would supposedly make gay marriage legal in all 50 states. Remember, that is, when we talked about that on the podcast, it's currently not in federal statutes, although it is legal everywhere because of the Supreme Court decision in Obergefell. However, one other thing that bill does, and it is literally, I think, aimed at things like polyamory, which has just been decriminalized in Utah, and then Grace will tell us more about what's happening in New York City. Yeah.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I was listening to these podcasters who were talking about it because I heard they did a podcast talking about it. They're very secular. They're these like influencers, but they grew up Mormon in Utah, and so they were giving their perspective on it. It's just crazy, honestly. Like, it's a very, like some people, a lot of people who live in Utah are Mormon, and I'm not going to say, obviously every Mormon does not practice this, but a lot of them do.
The official Mormon church does not sanction polygamy.
Right. But it's definitely, it happens. Oh, yeah, they literally did. There's like a documentary on Netflix. I started watching it, but I was like, oh, this is just too gross.
I bet.
But like, they were talking about how they're these like mom talk influencers on TikTok, and they're Mormon, and obviously not practicing Mormons because they celebrate this, but they're talking about how it was like this whole scandal thing where they like hook up with each other's husbands, but only if the husbands are in the same room. And I was just like, this is something that's like celebrated on TikTok in Utah. Like, this is a normal thing in Utah. I feel like if you do that, like you'd probably want to hide it. I know. And also, I
don't want to hear anything more about that.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. So, anyways, I'm gonna tell you about what happened in New York City. We don't need to talk about Utah anymore.
Oh no, I didn't finish. So,
sorry.
So the thing that the Disrespect for Marriage Act has, Grace, is it says if one state has X in its marriage law,
yeah,
then Y state, or then another state, state B, has to have Z in its, or has to have X in its marriage law too. So it's basically saying, if in effect Massachusetts or New York said polyamorous marriages are legal, they're amazing, they're powerful.
Is Massachusetts advocating for that?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm guessing they are. I just bring them up because they were the first state to make gay marriage legal.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But so if one state did that, then someone in Minnesota who is in a polyamorous relationship can sue
Nashville
to get the same tax benefits that a polyamorous couple in Massachusetts gets and say, well, this federal law says that I deserve the same benefits, the same dignity. Well, it's all about dignity.
It's just how laws work, though. It's like cases stack upon each other. Like you're constantly cross-referencing them, and not only in your state but nationwide, like you're saying. Right. So, yeah.
So anyway,
it does have implications.
Without telling you anything about the story, I just talked a little bit about why it matters when another state does something with regards to marriage law. But tell us what New York City is actually doing, Grace.
Yeah, so a New York City judge ruled that polyamorous unions are entitled to the same legal protections as two-person relationships, quote unquote.
Out loud.
So this means like tax status, like other things. Yeah. What other benefits do you get? Is it just tax status? I don't know.
Well, there's other things that might...
As an unmarried woman.
Like inheritance,
okay.
Inheritance law. In theory, there's things like visitorship rights in hospitals, things like that. But generally, we're talking about marriage being something that's tax advantaged. It's good to be married from a tax perspective.
So the judge that ruled this said that the hope was to create a more inclusive interpretation of a family. More inclusive. And the thing is, if we include everything, then it's like the whole idea of family falls apart, because how long before we decide that pets can legally be part of the family and can have tax benefits, honestly?
That makes me think of the
like,
whole fur baby
that's
thing.
what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, because it's so disgusting. I think this is so controversial, but when someone gets, like, two people are married and then they get, like, a dog and they're like, we're just not ready to commit to a kid yet, but we have our little fur baby. And then they, like, do the poodle's hair and, like, put bows in it and sleep with it. Also, it's so nasty when people sleep with their dogs in their bed.
Whoa.
So nasty. Oh my gosh. But, like, the hair on people's pillows, our producer is glaring.
All right.
It's so gross.
Let's get back to the topic at hand.
Okay. Fur babies. Okay, so the judge says, why does a person have to be committed to one other person in only certain?
Does it have to be a person?
That's what I was gonna say. Fur baby, in only certain prescribed ways in order to enjoy stability and housing after the departure of a loved one. What? Do all non-traditional relationships have to compromise or include only two primary persons? Also, I love that it's like persons or like partner or relationship. Right. It's like we're not going to say man and woman. No, because that could be a Z. It could be like, what are some other... People identify as so many different things.
That one meme where the guy's like, on all levels except the physical, I am a wolf.
Oh, that was so bad. Have you seen Ben Shapiro responding to some of them / Matt Walsh? Matt Walsh does the really good shorts on YouTube where he's like...
Yeah. I don't really watch those because it's like so cringe.
I only watch it when my sister sends them to me because she's kind of obsessed. She's in her Daily Wire obsessive era.
Okay.
She loves Brett. What's her name? Brett Cooper. Our producer tells me that Brett Cooper of Daily Wire is like copying me. That I was the OG.
Is telling you that Brett is a man's name, so is it Brett
spicy.
Or Brett?
It's Brett.
Okay.
Yeah, I follow her on Instagram. I don't know how she honestly has the energy to put out content every day, but you go, girl. Wow. Okay, and then the judge said, if not having the opportunity to marry serves to disrespect and subordinate gay and lesbian couples, why wouldn't the same imposition of this disability serve to disrespect and subordinate people who find fulfillment in polyamorous relationships? And so again, we hear this like re-echoing theme of everyone is free to choose his or her or Z's own path to fulfillment, right? Like your personal fulfillment is the highest good in society, and your personal fulfillment probably looks a lot different than most of personal fulfillment. Right. So you go girl, you go boy, you go Z. Like you do you, boo. Yeah. That's kind of the vibes that I'm getting. And as we know, we've talked about this on the podcast before, like the nuclear family is the foundational building block for not only society, but it's ordained by God, right? And so it is the best for society because God ordained it, right? And so children thrive when the family is stable, as well as the couples themselves. Yeah. And so, and the church does too, you know? And so this is honestly not super surprising when I saw this headline because of all the craziness that's happening.
So much in the news in the last few years, just absolutely... front and centering polyamorous couples and talking about how amazing their lives are and the decisions that they make and how it's absolutely wonderful and no, we're not jealous at all, et cetera, et cetera. It's inherently unstable.
Yeah.
The people who engage in it are probably unstable themselves, but just that form of a relationship is literally unstable.
I agree. I was that podcast I was listening to, the reason I brought it up was to make this point, and I forgot to make it, but it was the secular podcast of some influencers commenting on the Mormon TikTok, like the mom talk stuff. They were saying, and they are not Christian at all, like they grew up Mormon, they're not anymore, but they were saying that they can't imagine, like, they said that, like, marriage is a lot of work. They're both married. And they're like, we can't imagine, like, putting another person into that because you already have to think about, like, your feelings and that person's feelings, and you have to, like, work through really hard things together. But, like, imagine if you're responsible for a third person. Yeah. And they said, like, they can't imagine it. And then they pulled this statistic. I can't remember where they pulled it from, but they said that, like, 97% of polyamorous relationships or marriages end in disaster.
Well, of course
which is not shocking. And
just in the sense, like, if I can interrupt, like, that reminds me so much of this very, very famous interview that Princess Diana did in like 1996 or 1995, I think, with Martin Bashir on the BBC. And she said, he was asking, why did your marriage fail? And she said, well, there were 3 of us in that marriage, referring to her husband having an affair. And
it's really sad.
She was not exactly innocent in that matter, but the point is that they...
Do you watch The Crown?
Yes, I did.
So good.
So in that case, literally talking about a marriage with 3 people in it. One of the most famous failed marriages of all time between Charles and Diana. And Grace talking about how 93% of all polyamorous
97 they said,
97%
which is insane.
Of all polyamorous relationships are going to crash and burn.
Because it ain't the way God designed it, folks.
Yeah, and it's just like...
Yeah.
The idea that this is a long-term... The fact is, it's when I say it's unstable, what I mean is that it just simply will never, ever last, you know.
Facts.
Anyway,
Yeah, it's not good for society. It's not good for you personally. It's not going to be good for the people that you're in relationships with. So we covered a lot of ground in today's episode, I have to say, Moses. We will have to tell you guys what we're reading next week. But yeah, we'll save that for next week since this episode is getting long. Moses, tell people where they can go to get our voter guide.
Remember, go to mnfamilyvoter.com, see your pro-life, pro-family candidates, share the guide with friends and family members so that they can get that information too. This has been the Family Weekend podcast with Grace Evans and Moses Bradford. We're so glad that you joined us on video or audio today, and we will see you again soon. Remember, get the facts so that you can stand for truth.
Thanks for listening to or watching this episode of the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you're up to date on life, family, and religious freedom. You can follow us on Instagram at MN Family Council and subscribe to us on YouTube to watch our content. Get the facts, stand for truth.